So a little while ago I made sort of a fool of myself when I got all excited about buying an E25 in 2021, thinking that this was a rare tank that they were only selling rarely since they removed it from the premium shop in 2015, when in fact they've been selling this thing every 6 months. And that sort of got me thinking and made me look into their premium shop history. They don't let you search on their website for individual tanks, but they do give you the premium sales history back to 2013 actually. And what I did was I went back to 2017, which is sort of a relevant enough time span, and I made a list of what they sold when. So the goal of this video basically is three things. Number one, I'm basically gonna give some perspective when they sold what, so that next time they come at you being like, oh, this is the only chance you're ever gonna get to get this tank, you can be like, nah, you sold this 3 weeks ago or 6 months ago, whatever it may be. Number two, I'm gonna go into the history of what they sold when, including very rare tanks back in 2014. And number three, I'm gonna do some speculating what rare tanks are gonna come up for sale next, because there are some candidates. Before I go into this whole list, I want to give you sort of three key points as to how I think their main strategy for selling these tanks works. The first one is really obvious. They always make you think that this is sort of the last chance you get to buy a vehicle. Like right here, for example, in October 2019, they were selling the Turtle, going, oh, this is the last chance. You don't know when we're going to sell this tank again. Well, let's have a look. So this is right here, Turtle, where is it there? 2019 October. Well, they sold it 2 months later in the advent calendar. Then after that, 4 months later, 3 months later, 4 months later, and then 4 months later again in the black market. So you can get this thing all the time. Now, I know this isn't something special, but I still think it's good to know. It really makes it easier to decide when you're gonna get what tank. You don't have to feel pressured, you know? The second point is, what is the second point? The second point is that there's sort of a system when they sell what. Now, I doubt that there's anyone at Wargaming that's actually got a list where they plan when they're gonna sell what, but let's look at, for example, the LT432. They haven't sold that in almost a year. So somebody at Wargaming is going to be like, okay, LT432, let's look at when we sold this last time. Well, it's been a while. Let's put it up for sale again. This is sort of what you see with most tanks. There are some tanks that only get sold every 6 months, and then there's a bunch of tanks that get sold on average every 2 or 3 months. And the third key point is that they're getting increasingly brazen with how they sell what tank, which for us means, well, we're going to get more chances to get rarer tanks. And for them, well, basically they get more money. What this also means is that we're going to get, I think, new rare tanks that are going to be coming up for sale that haven't been sold yet. So let's actually get into this list. Now, I haven't put every single tank in the game in this list because there's some tanks that are just not that interesting. But what I have done is I've divided this list into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is sort of just good premium tanks that aren't in the in-game store. Tier 2 is slightly rarer premium tanks, like, for example, the BTSV, that don't get sold that often, or that only get sold on special occasions, like, for example, the FE215B, which is a tier tank that you can only really get for credits. It's not that rare. And then S tier is the actual rare tanks that either get sold very rarely and that you have to gamble for or auction for, or that haven't been sold at all yet. Now I'm gonna go over tier 1 relatively quickly because it's not that interesting. I think a good example for a tier 1 tank is sort of the TL1 LPC, which since it got introduced in October 2019, got sold, well, 4 times, once in the black market. And when I saw this in the black market, I actually thought this was sort of a special rare tank, but it really isn't. They're just, we can see, they're just sort of selling this thing, where is it? On the website, here it is, every now and then. It's a good tank, and the next time this kind of comes up, you can just free to decide if you want it or not. There's no pressure there. They're gonna sell this again and again and again and again. The Scorpion G, that used to get sold a lot. It's a really overpowered tank, and I think this one's actually starting to get sold a little less because it's so good. I mean, it was in the advent calendar, and it pops up on the website occasionally, but they don't want too many of this in the game. Turtle Mark 1 is another tank that was on the black market. That's okay, but slow. That also, I thought this was special, but again, they're just selling this thing every 3 months. Carnarvon X is the same, M54 Renegade is the same. Lost C actually hasn't been sold that much recently. I think they're gonna sell this soon. It's not rare. Then you have these sort of really overpowered pay-to-win tanks that I've just put together because I don't care about projectors or TS5s or defenders or EBRs, the 274, whatever. Those things get sold all the time on their website. They're too strong. They don't want too many in the game, but they also want to make some money, so they're gonna keep selling these. Board is the exact same. Actually, before I made this video, I updated this list. And I was thinking that they were going to sell the board soon, and as it turns out, here is April of 2021. They are selling this thing this month. T-34-3, I think that was in the in-game store before. Now it's not. They just buffed it and sold it in March. Cromwell B is a good tier, what is that, tier 6 premium tank. Selling it all the time. SU-130 is a good money maker. I think they're going to sell this one in the next 2 months. 703 version 2, I got nothing on that tank. The LT432, that one's interesting because it's a very good tier 8 light tank that hasn't been sold in a while, so I think we'll see this soon. The STRV 81 is not that special. I kind of like it because it's a Swedish Centurion. I like the Centurion, so I don't know, this will probably come up in the next few months. It's not that crazy. T103, I saw a video of someone kind of hyping this thing up for some reason. I don't know. I don't think there's anything special about this. And the T27 you can also see get sold all the time. Not that special. And I realized that I left out a few tanks here, but again, like, this category is definitely not that interesting. What I think you should sort of mention here is that the newer tanks, this is a trend that you definitely see. Like the G-Sor, the M4A1, FL10, and the Byzanti. Those got introduced in loot boxes, and I think that's sort of what we can expect. If they put new premium tanks in this game, they're probably not just going to make them available. They're either going to make them expensive or put them in some sort of gambling thing, which is... I mean, it's unfortunate, but you don't have to get them. Keep that in mind. You can just wait for maybe 4 months or so until they start selling them. I think, for example, the G-Star and the M4 FL10, I think those are going to be just sold as regular premium tanks relatively soon, and maybe they'll put them in loot boxes one more time. I'm not sure. Alright, moving on to tier 2. Now, you could argue that the E25 is more of a tier 1 tank because it just gets sold all the time. It just has that whole stigma of being removed from the premium shop for being too overpowered about it, which is why I put it in this tier. It should be tier 2, it is tier 1 in reality. Now, the ISU 130 is actually interesting because that got sold a lot, as you can see here, from 2018 on. Like, it got sold 3 times in 2019, twice in 2020. but only on the North American server. And as you know, they just buffed this on the super test, so I think we'll see this thing sold soon, and then also sold as sort of a rare tank, even though it's not, and you'll always be able to get it intermittently. The next one, the M6A2E1, this one's funny because A, I don't think it's that good, and B, it used to be sort of a rare tank for as a beta player reward, and now they're selling it all the time. So that's a typical example of them just getting more brazen and sort of, well, just selling tanks that they claim are rare all the time. Now the BTSV, that's a little tier 3 tank that's I like. I haven't gotten it yet. They're selling this thing, well, in 2019 and 2020 they sold this thing, well, twice or so, usually in some sort of bundle, on a, let's say, a 30-day premium account thing. I think we're gonna see this thing relatively soon. I'm surprised it hasn't come up yet, because you can see it was sold last in August 2020, so it's overdue. Panzer IIJ is sort of the same. You could obviously get both of these tanks in the secret warehouse in the black market, but that doesn't really count. So I think both of these tanks, the BTSV and the Panzer IIJ, are going to get sold soon in some sort of bundled form, and I mean, they're both fun. Now the FE215B 183, that's tier 10 tank destroyer, so that's not going to be sold on the premium store, but it's going to be sold for credits in some events, or maybe it'll just stay in the black market. The Panzer IV Schmalterm, this one's sort of rare. It's not that special, which is why it's tier 2, and I think it's also overdue for a sale. I mean, you can see that, when did they sell this? They sold it basically last in September 2020, and before that in summer 2019. 2018 it got sold a little more. Maybe I missed a few sales. I don't think that's that important. What is important is that I think this one's going to come up relatively soon, and I think it'll just be sold for regular money, because, and not in some sort of loot box or anything, even though they could put it in there just to spice it up. But usually they just sell this on their website regularly, and yeah, this one's overdue, and I kind of like it. I think I'm going to get it when it comes out. It's not that great. It's not bad. It looks cool. I don't know what's not to like about this thing. You don't have to get it because it's not overpowered. If you want it, you can have it. The Type 59 is interesting because that thing is actually obviously not rare, because a lot of people got it back in 2012 or whenever that stopped being sold from the premium shop. But they, for some reason, didn't really sell this one. They put it in loot boxes in 2017. I think it did sort of well for them, but since it's not that overpowered, it just got that premium matchmaking or whatever that's called. I think this one is sort of a contender for eventually coming up for sale as sort of a 24 or 72 hour deal, because they don't really have much to lose there. They're going to do relatively decent. An alternative would be that they're just going to keep putting this thing in loot boxes. I'm not sure. One of the two. The T-42, this is going to be a tier 1 tank very soon. It's not special. Again, I updated this list just today for this video, and before today, this was just sort of a promotion tank, which was kind of rare, and I actually thought this was going to get sold as sort of a regular tank soon. I mean, obviously they sold it back then as a promotion on their website, so nothing special there, but it just didn't get sold for a long time. And well, as it turns out, yeah, they're selling this thing this month in April 2021. It's not that special. It's a decent tier 8 medium tank. Whatever, if you want it, you can get it. It's not bad for the game. And the MX-50 Foch, that's, well, just like the FE215B, a tier 10 tank destroyer that's sold for credits. So it's not going to be in the regular store ever, or at least not in the next 5 years. Who knows what they're going to do in 5 years or so? how crazy they're going to get with this. But for now, I think this is going to be like an event vehicle or a black market vehicle. Alright, the S tier. This is where things actually get interesting.
I can see that you are only interested in the exceptionally rare.
These are the tanks that are actually legitimately rare and that are gonna be sold sort of through special occasions for the most part for a while to come. Some of these are eventually going to just be sold on their website in like special deals, I'm sure. But until then, we're gonna have to, well, it's gonna be a little while. So starting off with the T22 medium, well, that's obviously a tier tank that has a whole history to it. I think this is gonna stay a black market vehicle for a while because they can't just put this. I don't think they will put 210 tanks in loot boxes anytime soon. And obviously they can make it available for some sort of mission, which is not entirely unlikely. But this is a good tank for the black market, I think. The SU-76I, that overpowered tier 3 tank destroyer, is also one of these tanks that, well, you can definitely expect this in some sort of loot box. Maybe they will sell this eventually for a hefty price on their website as sort of a 24-hour deal, because that sort of is a good chance for them to make some money. And it's only a tier 3 tank, so I think there's some sort of chance for that, but for the most part, this one's a loot box and black market tank. I mean, the Type 59G, that was purely created for the black market, and I think this is gonna stay a black market tank for a long time. But I also think that because with every black market and with every sort of secret warehouse or whatever event they're doing, this gets less rare and less special. Eventually, they're gonna do something with it where they're gonna sell it, I think, really on their website somehow, or just gonna do something crazy with it. Or maybe they won't because they know they're piss off their players, but again, they're getting more brazen with this, so I don't think that's a concern for them. I wouldn't be too surprised if in the distant future they're gonna do something funny with this where they're gonna piss off some people. The Mini Mouse, as people call it, the Panzer Kampfwagen 38H. Not sure. I mean, who really cares about a little tier 3, whatever tank that is? I don't even know if it's a medium or a heavy tank. Are there tier 3 heavy tanks? I don't know. This one, since I think its main feature is just its armor. And it's a tier 3 tank. This one's probably gonna be in some loot boxes, gonna stay in the black market, and might actually, since it's not that terribly detrimental to the game as far as I know, I think this one's also got a chance for being included in some sort of website offer. The KV-220 is actually sort of interesting because this used to get just sold on their website. As you can see there, in 2019 got sold twice, 2018 got sold at least once, 2020 got sold at least once. Maybe I missed something, I don't know, because it seems right now that it didn't get sold for over a year. So I think this one's gonna come up soon. I don't see why not. I don't think they really can make this thing too special and sell it through, I don't know, some crazy loot box deal or something, because why would they? It's not that crazy. Even though, you never know with these things. But I think this one's gonna come up this year on their website. Now, this one. The T44-122. This one never got sold. This is, I think, some sort of press account, community moderator, or contributor, or whatever tank. And I think this one's a really good contender for a rare tank that's going to come up soon in the black market or a loot box. Because why wouldn't they? They're not going to just leave this tank in their files and not make money off it. They know people want it. They're definitely gonna sell this through some sort of gamble in the future. I'm not sure if it's gonna be, I mean, who would know when they're gonna do it, but there's no reason why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they sell this tank? Panzer V4 is, in that sense, sort of I mean, it's a really overpowered tier 5 tank, and they so far only sold it on the black market. And that thing used to be a gift to alpha testers. So again, another tank that they said they weren't going to sell, that they started selling on the black market. I think this one's going to sort of continue to be a black market and loot box tank until it sort of loses its rarity to a certain degree. Then I could see them selling this on their website somehow, because I don't think this is more detrimental to the game than the E25, and as you know, they have no problem selling the E25. The Aufklärungspanzer, my favorite tank, used to be a tech tree tank, got removed, got put back into the game as a tier 7 light tank that was sold on the black market. I think there's a good chance that they're either going to sell this or the tier 8 variant, the Aufklärungspanzer 5, on their website. But I think the tier 7 that's in the game right now, I think they're going to put that through another round of the black market or loot boxes or whatever before they start selling it regularly, because that would just make more sense for them. The A32 is also a very rare tank that was just sold on the black market, was in the gift shop briefly, and apparently got sold as part of a pre-order package. As you know, this, well, it's a tier 3 tank that's not that crazy good. I think just like the Panzer 5.4, this one's gonna go through a few more iterations of the black market and loot boxes, and will then be sold on their website as maybe a bundle with 365 accounts a days of premium account or something. But I think eventually that's what they're gonna do. Then there's the MTLS G14. That thing used to be rare because it only was sold, you could only really get this on a press account or something. And then in 2019 they did that World of Tanks 1.0 marathon where you could get it. For some reason I have this tank. I don't know how I got it. I don't think I took part in that marathon, so who knows. And this one's actually a really good contender to just be sold regularly eventually, because it's, is that crazy? It's definitely the first 2-barrel tank in the game, which is sort of funny and makes it a little bit special. I'm not sure how overpowered that is, but if it's not too crazy overpowered, this one's definitely just going to get sold in some sort of bundle where they try to make some money off it by, making people buy the 365 days of premium or something. And last, there's this M4A2E4. This one I think is really interesting because this is a beta reward tank for, well, anyone that played 1,000 battles in the beta test period. And this thing hasn't been sold since then. Well, it never got sold, obviously, but it hasn't been available since then. And it's just a tier 5 medium tank that's not that crazy good. It got, good looking mud flaps. I definitely want it. And this I think will come up in either the black market or the loot boxes really soon. I don't think they've forgotten about this, and they don't have to feel too bad about putting this in the game. So yeah, we're gonna be seeing this one relatively soon. I mean, they don't want to put all their rare old tanks out at once because they just, they want to spice up their sort of sales, so they're sort of putting them out incrementally. But this one's a very, very hot contender. I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Now, I realize I've left out a decent amount of tanks on this list. I think less of the really rare tanks than of the common tanks, but even on the rare tanks, there's some tanks out there, like I think, for example, an SU-122-54 that sort of float around, that are eventually going to come up, I think, because they know how much people want these rare tanks. I left them out just to, I guess, create some suspense, because, I don't know, there's more tanks than just this list, more rare tanks than just these few that are going to be coming up eventually, because that's essentially what the point of this video is, to sort of look at what they have and look at what they're going to put out in the future. And I think that's sort of exciting. I'm definitely intrigued by this. Now, there's one more thing that I really want to get into when it comes to Rare Tanks, and that's this whole concept of gambling and loot boxes and auctions and sort of, putting players against other players in the auctions, which sort of creates a bad atmosphere in the game. Because I feel like loot boxes you really have to put into perspective, and that whole thing you have to put into perspective, because basically you have to keep in mind that this game is actually really good as a free-to-play game. You can get into this game, you can, play, I don't know, the Sherman, go up the Russian medium line. You can really play this game, be relatively good at it, and not pay any money. So you're not forced to gamble on tanks or anything. So that's one side. The other thing is that once you get into this game, once you start caring about rare tanks, you're talking about actual online gambling. And gambling is a really, really dark thing. Like, it's easy to sort of dismiss it as, oh, you're just gambling for, some sort of online item. No, it's more than that. Like, there's a reason gambling is sort of considered a mental illness, because there are a bunch of people that sort of react really poorly to this sort of temptation, that will really be negatively affected by this. And I'm not really qualified to comment on that too much, but I think this definitely in some way taints their game. Obviously it makes it more exciting. I personally like it. I don't like the whole concept of putting players against players in those, gold auctions. It's sort of a difficult thing, because on one hand I like it, on the other hand gambling is a really bad thing. Maybe I've been pretty much rambling this whole video, so who cares? And well, yeah, that's that. This, making this list was fun, but it did take a little time. If you want more videos like this, I would appreciate a like. And I will see you next time.